Welcome back to another episode of the Experts in Fire podcast by Woodland Direct. I'm your host, Mike Vennard, and with me today is one of our master hearth professionals, Randy Mowry. Today's topic is how patio heaters add value to your business. Let's get into it.
Hey, Mike, how you doing this morning, sir?
I'm great, Randy. How are you, buddy?
What's going on, Mike? Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you as well. Here we are recording some more episodes of the Experts in Fire podcast, and I tell you what, patio heaters, man, what do you think of those things right now?
They are going crazy right now. With the state that all of our restaurants are in right now, having to extend their outdoor season even further than they normally would, we get calls every day, all day, about how to do that. And patio heaters is the way to do it.
Absolutely. So, you know what? Let's just dive in. I was sitting here thinking about this topic just the other day, going, how can we help our pros out there who are, I'm sure they're getting, tons of calls, as many as we are, just for how installation, how to place these things, what to do with them. There's so many options when it comes to patio heaters. And we get calls every day as well from businesses, restaurants especially, who are setting up outdoor areas. Randy, I believe there's a restaurant right by our building there in Auburn Hills that put up a big tent, like a wedding tent, and is hanging patio heaters from the bars of the tent just to allow people to come in and enjoy their services. And they're just trying to stay open and serve people and allow people to be safe. Obviously, everybody, as we're talking about this, we want you to be safe. Please stay safe and follow the rules that have been put out there for this pandemic, while at the same time try to have some sort of normalcy in life. So let's just talk today, Randy, about how these business owners can add value to their business, as well as how the installing pro, can add value to their business as an installer of these patio heaters.
Not only are we getting some of the restaurant owners, I'm working with a couple local restaurant owners here where we're at in the Detroit area. But we're also getting the contractors that have been enlisted to search out, solutions for the restaurants themselves. And the big thing right now is temporary setups. Like how can we set this up temporary? We're hoping when everything clears that we are probably going to get rid of like these temporary tents. So a couple things we want to start with always is, is this a fully open air application? Is there no roof overhead? Or is this a semi-confined space? The reason being is because both gas and electric, they have their place, but we also want to make sure that people are safe. So, we can touch on open air just means just that. They're just tables to the curbs, to the streets. They're closing streets and they're setting tables up. They don't have the opportunity to be able to put up a tent or any kind of overhead structure. So it's just a full open air area. So we're finding a lot of folks just want to use some type of portable heater. That's kind of where your freestanding portable unit that would use a standard barbecue grill tank fits inside of it. It can be easily moved and rolled around based on the configurations of folks' tables. And you can get 10 hours of usage out of, one tank. That's the most common right now, Mike.
Yeah, let's talk to that for just a second. I know in the open air arena, most people are choosing to hang patio heaters if they can. So let's start there, and then we can move to more of your portable, heaters that can move around a space. But I also want to talk to Randy as we go, the difference between those hanging units that have a different type of heat, infrared heat, versus portable, what we would call a mushroom style heater. And there are other options out there at this point as well that offer infrared heat, but your mushroom style heater is a completely different style of heat. So let's start with open air. If I'm a business owner And I just have, and we see this all the time everywhere we go as my wife and I travel about the state here. Everywhere we go, you see restaurants that never had outdoor seating now have outdoor seating, right?
Oh, I know, it's all over.
They're jamming them on sidewalks. There's one place up by our cabin that has literally taken a section of their parking lot and moved the tables from inside to outside. So they're trying to figure out ways to heat these spaces, especially here in the north where we're at the front of September and you're already getting down into the, 50s, sometimes touching the high 40s at night, and they want to extend that season. So if I have an open air space, Randy, and I'm calling you, Randy, I own a restaurant and I want people to be warm. Walk me through some of the process that you're going to walk me through as the owner of this restaurant.
Open air concept is it is just that. It's open air. There is no roof overhead. So that brings upon its own challenges on what's going to be available in a patio heater. Because if we have no overhead structure to be able to suspend a heater, then we have to entertain either some type of freestanding on a pole or a portable style of unit. So there's infrared heats, like you mentioned some infrared, and then you have the gas. Infrared heats, it's a direct heat. We're heating objects and not airspace. So we're not controlling the I should say the wind. Any kind of airflow is not affecting the heaters and the output of where those are placed. Prime example, right now I'm working on an open airspace in New York. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of restrictions in small little places like that. It's fully open. We have trees above the place. He has one wall and it's just an end run on the patio, so there's no place to mount anything on one end. We can use the building on another. We don't really, we can't have any kind of gas above because of the trees. So we're doing electric infrared units there. We're able to, with infrared, you can mount them on a wall mount. You can suspend them from a ceiling if we have a ceiling, or you can put them on a pole. And so that's why we've chose to use electric in this application, because we have one wall we can use, and then on the opposite end, he does have a place that he can actually mount some and make them as we'll call a temporary pole setup, so that when he is done, they're not a permanent fix to the ground, and then he just has to suspend his electric somehow.
Talk a little bit about those electrics, Randy. So, when I think of these companies that are putting out electric heaters, obviously you're going to have an electrician run these things. And, this is a great place for me to say, if you are a business owner and you are putting in a patio heater that has to be connected outside of the portables, even with the portables, so you need to check your local codes and make sure you can have those there. But if you're putting in electrics or gas that are going to be hanging, you need to make sure you have a professional do this for you. It's imperative that you have a professional install these, because they're going to know the local codes and they're going to know what it is that, if any, I don't want to say law enforcement, because a police officer isn't going to walk by, but any code enforcement individual within your community walks by and sees it, they're going to have questions. So make sure your pro handles these things for you. But Randy, when it comes to electric, are they hardwired in or do they plug in?
You can get 120 volt plug-in styles. Those are going to be more geared towards small, like enclosed patios, I call them, residential usage. When we're talking restaurants, commercial applications, things of that nature, and even homes, I mean, probably over 95% of the homes that we do, they're all going to be 208/240 volt units. That's just the way to maximize the heat, because we're going to be in the 3, 4, 5, and 6,000 watt heaters. 6,000 watt heater, that equates to approximately around 20,000 BTUs. 5,000 watts are going to put you around 17,000 BTUs, kind of putting it into a BTU aspect. When we're talking restaurants, like for example, the ones that I'm working currently with, we're placing like 5,000 watt heaters, for example. A 5,000 watt heater is, on average, going to be easily, like a 10-foot by 10-foot area at a 12-foot mounting height at 17,000 BTUs. Now, you're going to be using multiple units of that. Now, from an electrical standpoint, kind of what you were talking about, there's a lot of places that have restrictions on how many watts can be used. I have a property in California that I'm working with, for example. The city has said that she can only use 300 amps was her max that she could use based on where her restaurant is with the adjacent businesses. So that's kind of really where the electrician, the pro, is going to really get involved in that part of in the layout and what is, we might need 400 amps, but if they're restricted to 300, we want to make sure that we get things sized correctly for the facility.
Absolutely. That's, when it comes to patio heaters, most people think it's just kind of a plug and play type of thing. And the complexities of just the electrics, let alone the gas, it becomes imperative that, an electrician comes out and works through this with you. So again, this episode is geared toward how to help your business when it comes to extending that season and being able to get patio heaters out there for your business. And we say that not just for our pros who are serving people. I've gone through a lot of towns here in Michigan where all the shops are putting some kind of patio heat outside because you're only allowed so many people in the store at a given time, and they want to make sure people are comfortable. And as well, probably the majority of what we see is with restaurants and any place that's serving, beverages or food. But then our pros on the installation side as well, when it comes to electricians on the electrical, and then your gas plumbers as well when it comes to gas. So we're going to keep kind of working through this as we talk about the different spaces. We started with open air. You gave the example of an open air area that was limited because of the trees that were above. Let's talk real fast. And you went with electrical there, Randy. So let's talk real fast about open air area. Let's say they have a pergola or some type of structure that's up above, but it's open. It's still completely open. What kind of option?
Yeah, so like in a semi-closed property, for example, I have one here locally in Michigan. They have from 10 foot all the way to 17-foot canopy. It's a permanent sail style canopy that's in structure, open on three sides. So they've got 10-foot openings on all three sides. It's approximately like a 30-foot by 20-foot area. Now, application where he's at is he wants gas. The gas is going to work better for their application. So the gas still requires electricity. So you have a gas contractor and an electrical contractor involved. This is where the mushroom style hanging version of a gas unit comes into play. So mushroom style meaning just like your freestanding units that are portable, you can move around. You can buy those units in an electronic version head as gas. It has its own mounting frame, has kind of a decorative filigree around the heads, and they actually suspend from the ceiling. And what's nice about the way that they're set up is they're easily manipulated and mounted to one of these temporary style of awnings and tents that have any kind of cross member, any structural place to be able to suspend it from. The heaters, they're lightweight. They're, maybe about 20 pounds, 25 pounds with the assembly of the head and the brackets. There's a little bit of investigation that needs to be done on both ends. And these are the questions that I was asking him, and he was able to get with his contractor, get the information so that we could make the correct decision for his application.
That's a great example, Randy. So it just really has a lot to do with your space, what's available inside of your space, and how it's going to work. So, the question we love to start with is, tell me about your project. And a lot of times, especially when a pro calls us an installer, or even somebody who owns a restaurant, they have an idea in mind of what they want to accomplish. And really, it's just digging out the details from them of, what kind of space do you have? A lot of times it's, I saw this on, a TV or a DIY show or in a catalog or online, and I want to do that here. We are definitely willing to try and help make that happen as long as it is a fit. And that's where we really bring our expertise to the table to help people see what is going to fit, and then if what they had in mind isn't going to fit, then find them an option that will still meet their expectation and get the heat to the customers that they need. You have fire-related questions, and we have answers. You can email us your questions at podcast@woodlanddirect.com or give us a call at 586-221-3638. We would love to be able to answer them right here on the Experts in Fire podcast. So we have an open air space. Let's talk a little bit about that enclosed space. When it comes to enclosed, can you define that for us, Randy?
So enclosed space is going to be, we'll use a restaurant that has, let's say they have a patio area that's inside the envelope of the building with roll-up garage doors. So when those doors are closed, it's a fully enclosed space. It's a confined space envelope with the inside of the restaurant itself. When the doors are open, it's, all of a sudden it becomes semi, you're pulling fresh air in, you're pulling cool air in, things of that nature. But as a whole, it's a confined space. You might as well just call it an enclosed patio on the back of your home that you can open up your screen windows back and forth. So an application like that, the option, is really going to be electric patio heaters. They're going to be infrared patio heaters. They can be either ceiling or wall mounted. We have a number of restaurants that use overhead infrared heaters in this exact same application. They're object heaters, so when that heater's above me, it's keeping me warm. Now, don't get me wrong, when I step away from the table, I walk over to use the restroom. It's think in terms of, you're standing in the beating sun and you step into a shade tree, that temperature differential that you're going to feel, because now we're stepping out of the envelope of heat that's coming off that heater that's above my head, because it is strictly heating the objects, myself, the table, the chairs. If they're overhead of my barbecue grill at home and where I'm cooking, that's what they're designed to do. Very, very efficient way to heat a space because they're not affected by wind. Unlike a gas one, which is going to kind of move around, these are not. So they're perfect for enclosed spaces.
Yeah, I love that example, Randy. It is the difference of standing under a tree and standing in the sun, and if you've ever seen my hairstyle, which I know you have, standing in the sun can be painful if I'm out there too long, right? And then stepping under the tree, that is infrared heat exchange right there. So and a great example that you gave is if the wind blows, that heat is directly heating an object. One of the thoughts that people have when they think about patio heats is it's going to heat this space kind of like a furnace would. And that's just not the reality of what patio heaters do. They heat a general space, but it's not like turning a furnace on or, pumping up one of those big, did you ever have one of those big garage heaters?
Oh, yes. The hanging ones from the ceilings or the turbo ones.
Yeah, the torpedo ones.
Torpedo units. Oh my gosh. Yes. I remember thinking I had a great idea of hooking that up in my garage and setting up all my gym equipment in the garage, and it would work great when I was about 17 years old, and until I about gasped, couldn't get enough oxygen because I was like, why is it smelling here, filling it with air? Oh
exactly.
My gosh, geez, the gas.
Exactly. We have come a long ways. So these heaters aren't going to just heat a space like that. They're an infrared heater is there and it's heating objects. And that's an important thing for people to understand the difference between more heat that you want, the more heaters you're going to need to have. We've talked about open air space. We've talked about an enclosed area. Let's just talk a little about the design of, I had a gentleman call me back when I was selling, 7+ years ago now. And he was in North Dakota. I coached out in North Dakota for a while, so I get it. It's cold out there. So it was nice to talk to a fella from North Dakota, but he told me, Mike, I want heaters that are going to turn my outdoor deck here. I want it to take it from 10 degrees to 70 degrees. And I said, I told him that's called the sun. There is no patio heater that's going to do that for you. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the expectations that these business owners can have when it comes to heaters, and then what's a proper expectation for number of patios, because everybody has a budget, right? And we're never trying to push you beyond your budget. We're trying to give you what you need or want inside of a budget, but still be honest about it. So when it comes to these heaters, Randy, what are you looking at? Is there a general rule of thumb that we could put out there?
One of the first things I do ask is really, what is the placement? Like, what are you trying to heat? Do we have a temporary bar out at the restaurant because now we are moving to this temporary outdoor area? How many tables are out there? What's the configuration of tables? Try to get even some kind of like napkin drawing from the client of the placement of their furniture and where their patrons are going to be. Because as we talked about, these are object heaters. Unless they want to cover the entire footprint of the area, like let's just say if it's a 24 feet by 24 feet area, unless they're trying to cover every square inch of that, we want to remember that they're object heaters. So if we're working with 24 foot by 24 foot, but all they really care about is a 12 by 12 area, and maybe it's some of the tables are offset, we might only look to do a couple 4,000 watt heaters in that area where the people are sitting, because we're only focusing on where the folks are sitting at. We're not concerned with the whole other area of it's just open space. It's not used for any kind of sitting or standing. We want to just make sure wherever people are, congregating, sitting around, those are the areas we're going to focus on. So what are they trying to accomplish? Are we trying to cover every square inch of that patio area, or focus on a specific area of seating? Then we can do the calculations based on what they're going to have available for amperage. We may be limited. It could be controls. But the thing with that is the calls are coming in are like, okay, this is the footprint I have. This is what I have to work with. How do I get heat out there? Then it goes back to them. Okay, what are you looking to heat up? Can we get power out there? This is the power we need. Then kind of go all through the different installations.
Yeah, so you just put so much in there.
I side railed everything, but yeah.
That's great. And really, I'm glad you did, Randy, because it isn't just as simple as, okay, I want to run with, 4 patio heaters in this space. And that's why we always suggest, if you're looking at purchasing heat for a space like that, if you really dive into what it is that you're going to need, call an expert. That's what we're here for. That's what Randy's here for, and other guys just like him. We're going to walk you through the needs that you're going to have, and then find out if you even have the ability to satisfy that. But we can find a way to get you what you need. When we start, though, with a customer or with a client, we can here's a 12 by 12 patio. I want to heat this, Randy. Are there some rules of thumb for how close they should be?
There is, a local restaurant around the corner from my home. They are building a wood structure outside. It's approximately, 10 feet, but they're going to end up mounting heaters right to the wood beam on the bottom, electric heaters. So what's nice about that is, we have a manufacturer that has a 6-inch bracket, and when that heater is mounted to the bracket, we have to have 18 inches of clearance to the left, to the right. So 360 degrees around that, we have to have 18 inches of clearance. So what that means is, let's say that they put a wood fence on one side as a wind blocker. Well, no matter how you look at it, if it's suspended from the ceiling, we have to be 18 inches minimum from that wood fence or that wall there. So that any kind of clearance is combustible, whether if it's somebody who just has a tongue and groove ceiling, any kind of wood, vinyl, anything that's combustible. Gas heaters, using the same scenario, suspended from the ceiling. It's all of a sudden now it's 24 inches, of clearance from the top of that unit, and then 24 inches, 360 degrees around it from any combustibles. So you can see there's a pretty significant difference in both the height and the 360 clearance around the units. That's why each heater has its place in an installation, but we have to figure out what is going to work best, and more importantly, what's going to be the safest installation for that client.
Absolutely. So, just again, the technical aspect of what you're dealing with when it comes to patio heaters and hanging them from any structure or any portion of what you're trying to do overhead. I don't want people to get scared or nervous when listening to this because it's not difficult. It's just you need to know what you're talking about, and you need to know what you're working with, and you need to know the specs of what you're working with in terms of brand.
Yeah, it's just getting all the questions answered and making sure that everything is safe and the placement is correct. And where somebody may think this is a great idea, this is the space I have, all of a sudden there might be a TV above it or a window below it, and then that's all of a sudden that's not going to work because you're going to melt the TV or could blow a window depending on the application. So we just want to make sure that everything is correct.
Right, right, absolutely. And again, we are talking about how patio heaters add value to your business. So we really want to make sure that the value add is best for your scenario, because it would not be cool if a TV started melting while everyone was sitting there trying to watch it during the big game or, the big fight.
Yeah, especially if it's a pay-per-view and they paid for the preview.
Exactly.
Not going to be happy.
I think we've covered pretty good the technical aspect of hanging patio heaters. We've talked electric, we've talked some gas. Before we switch over to the portable type units, give me in your mind the difference between electric and gas and then the benefits to each.
Electric is nice because it's the versatility. We can use them in an open air space and or confined space, as we talked about, something that has a roll-up door that all of a sudden is enclosed. The electric we can use. Your gas patio heaters, they are going to be semi-open air, meaning it's open on 3 to 4 sides, with some type of awning or roof overhead, as long as it fits within the clearances. We don't want to use those in any kind of confined space because then we're trapping gas into that space. Gas units, for the most part, it is gas. We want to make sure that it is all open air. And when you're talking gas, they are going to be, this is not something where you're popping up a portable tent typically and then going to run gas lines unless it's we'll call it semi-permanent. We hope with the current things that are going on with the restaurants and having to expend their seasons that they didn't plan on, if those are temporary tents, meaning just a few months, it may not be the most efficient way to use their money in running gas line and electrical to suspend a gas unit outside, and that's where we would use electric. One of my restaurant guys, he's not doing the gas because he wants to do electrical because he's like, the electrical is easier for me because I can just rip down the conduit and call it a day if I decide I don't want this out here. Where if I'm doing gas units, man, we're hard piping gas. There's a lot more work going into the gas units for some of these restaurants. And not only that is, if we're extending the patio area for a restaurant where they're just closing the street and you're only going out 10, 12 feet, gas hanging units is probably something that I would talk about, but move away from, and then discuss electric ones with a client.
Sure. What if, though, I have a space outside that I've always had tables at? I mean, it's always been something that I've done, and I want to keep going because I need to. And this is really just a value add to my restaurant or coffee shop or whatever it is that I want to put permanent heaters out there. Gas, electric, does gas put out more heat? Does electric put out more heat? What's the value there?
So per unit, on average, a gas heater, they are going to offer twice the heat. So you're going to be in that like 39 to 40,000 BTUs versus an electric unit at 6,000 watts produces about 20,000 BTUs on average. So they are going to produce twice the heat. And so that is why some of our restaurants and cafes, like you mentioned, where they do have a kind of a permanent outdoor area that now they are going to put like an overhang on it because now they want to protect it from any kind of rain, and they need to be able to use it through all kinds of weather instead of just the seasonal spring, summer. And that's where the gas heater would be perfect. We can get them mounted on the ceilings, on a pole, to get them dropped down if the ceilings are too high, a little bit there. And they're going to cover a lot more space as far as the heat output goes, definitely. But we always like to keep in mind, too, that depending on the gas units, now we're affected by our outdoor elements, our airflow, our wind. So they do have their place in the industry, but then they each have their pros and cons as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And the pro is it puts out more heat. The con is you have to constantly be I don't want to say concerned, but you have to have it on your mind. In windy situations, it could blow out. I would say with our ceramic styles, that's pretty difficult. That would be a high wind to do, and there are definitely safety measures that are in the unit itself, so it's not a danger. But if you bought it so that you can have heat, and now you can't have heat, that's the problem, right? And that is what we're discussing, is how to add value. So those things you need to think of. If you're not in a high wind area, then it's not really a huge concern. What is the difference between the infrared heat we were talking about hanging overhead and a mushroom style heater? So your traditional, here's a patio heater. It has a dome on top of it. It looks like a wok flipped upside down, right? Or a mushroom. And the heat comes out and hits that mushroom and then kind of spills down to you. Let's talk about the difference between that and what we were discussing with the infrared.
Yeah, so the mushroom style, I briefly touched on. You can get mushroom style heads that actually suspend from the ceiling. The portable versions are easy ways to just get some heat into an open air space using the curbside temporary eating areas that a lot of the restaurants are having to do right now, and just getting heat out into the space. We have to keep in mind first the clearances. Most of those units are going to be anywhere from 84 to 96 inches tall, and then require 24 to 36 inches of clearance above that. You have to have 2 foot of clearance 360 degrees around those units. So we definitely want to be conscious of that, because you definitely, you don't want one of those dome hoods butting up against the city tree at the curb. They are perfect because they are portable, meaning most units have a wheel kit on them, so you move them around just like you would a dolly. The units have anti-tilt limit switches in them. Basically, if it gets knocked over while it's being used, it shuts the system down. So there's a safety aspect that's built into it. Being portable, meaning using a 20-pound barbecue grill tank, you get about 10 hours of usage on average out of one of those propane tanks. And generally, you're going to cover anywhere from 8 foot to 10 foot circle. So if you take that dome and you create an envelope of heat, we'll call it 8 to 10 feet out, that's the radius of where that heat's going to go. Now, kind of going back to the gas, those are going to be affected by wind. So as that wind comes and blows through, it is going to blow that heat around. Think of standing around a bonfire. That air passes through and it blows that smoke towards your neighbor for a few minutes. Then all of a sudden it's blowing it towards you. Portable style heater, it's doing the same thing. However, what's nice about it is portable. So when you're done using that space, they go into a storeroom. They're not fixed to the concrete, but they do have their place, and they're great units to use. The most important thing that I can probably stress about a portable unit is, my question is always, is this portable temporary, or is this portable temporary seasonal that you're going to be using every single year? The reason I ask that is because you have residential grade units that will have a more economically priced tag on them. And then we have our commercial units that are designed to be used 10, 12, 14 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, versus something that is a residential grade, 3 to 5 hours every few days. The constructions of the units, the usage of the units is also going to be a big key in helping somebody make the right decisions on something too.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the temptation to run to the big box store and grab a bunch of $99 units. And I get it. Businesses are trying to stay afloat, stay alive in this pandemic here, and just keep their business going. Keep that in mind, though. If you own a store, or if you are a professional and you're looking to try and get heat into a space, those units are only going to last so long. There are other options out there as well. We have one unit that is an infrared gas unit, so it is directional. It's infrared heat. That is a portable unit, which is it's a really good option.
Yeah, and what's nice about those units there too, Mike, is Those ideally, because of the infrared ceramic gas unit, portable unit, because I am using those in an application where we're kind of creating a perimeter of heaters. We're only focusing on the interior envelope of where the heaters are pointed towards. We don't necessarily care about what's being heated. We don't need heat on the outside of them. And that's where the directional one comes into play, that unit you're talking about, because it's facing the people. It's not a dome style. It's a good application.
Absolutely. I think we've covered a lot of aspects of patio heaters here. And really, if you're a pro and you need just some design help, that's really what we get a call from a lot of our pros in terms of coverage of space. Feel free to give us a call anytime. And guys like Randy can definitely help you to set that scenario up. And if you are a business owner and you're looking to add that value for your customers, don't hesitate to call us as well. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help. We'll work directly with your installers as well. Once again, Randy, it is always a pleasure doing these podcasts with you, man. You have so much information. I'm very appreciative that you take the time out of your work day as a sales rep here at Woodland Direct and as a Master Heart professional. So appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you. My pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate our listeners too. Thanks for listening in. If you ever have something that you would love to hear discussed here, feel free to email us at podcast@woodlanddirect.com, or you can dial in a phone number as well and leave us a message at 586-221-3638. You have been listening to the Experts in Fire podcast by Woodland Direct. I'm your host, Mike Vennard. Thanks for joining us today. Next time, we'll be discussing, what do I need to know before buying gas logs? We'll see you then.